ASW2 is currently the root bridge for all VLANs within this topology. Show spanning tree. We can see here from the output that it's the root bridge for VLAN 1. It's the root bridge for VLAN 10. It's the root bridge for VLAN 20. It's also the root bridge for VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. Having an access layer switch as the root bridge is not a recommended best practice, and the reason why is because the root bridge is the seed, the reference point for the spanning tree topology. So it's where the tree grows from. As a result, all paths lead back to the root bridge, which means that it's potential that traffic could have to flow from ASW1 to DSW1 back down to ASW2 and then on to somewhere else within the layer 2 topology. We don't want that to happen because that puts a lot of burden on the access layer switches, which are not as powerful as the distribution layer switches. So we try to position the root bridge at the distribution layer or in the core, if we're using core switches there, with layer 2 links into the core. So in this example, I want DSW1 to be the root bridge for VLANs 10 and VLANs 100. And then we want DSW2 to be the root bridge for VLAN 20 and VLAN 200. That way there, all VLAN 10 and 100 traffic flows to DSW1. That's the path it's going to take. That's where the root bridge is. And all VLAN 20 and 200 traffic flows towards DSW2. So we have two separate spanning tree topologies here. Or pardon me, we'll have four separate spanning tree topologies, but two of them will mirror each other. 10 and 100 mirror each other, and 20 and 200 mirror each other. So the topologies will look very, very similar in those cases. So let's go over to DSW1, configure terminal. We'll do spanning tree, VLAN 10 and 100, and then we'll say the priority is going to be a value between 0 or from 0 to 61,440, but it has to be in increments of 4,096. Let's double check to see for VLAN 10 and 100 what the current priority is for ASW2. So for 100, it's 32,768, which is the default priority. And on ASW2 for VLAN 10, it's 32,768 for VLAN 10 as well. So as long as we configure a value lower than 32,768 on DSW1 in increments of 4,096, we will accomplish our goals. However, I want to add something to this. I want to make sure that DSW1 has the best chance of always being the root bridge for what? For VLANs 10 and VLANs 100. So I'm going to give it a priority of 0. Because that's the lowest priority you can have. So we're going to give it a priority of 0, and that gives it the best chance of always being the root bridge unless it disappears. So let's hit enter there. Now let's examine on DSW1 the output of show spanning tree for VLAN 10. And we can see from this output that we are the root bridge. It says it right there. But another way we can verify that is based on priority and MAC address. It's the same as the priority and MAC address listed underneath the local bridge information. So notice the priority is 0 plus 10. We configured 0, but the VLAN is 10, so the priority is 10 based on the extended system ID. And every single port is a designated port on the root bridge. Let's also look at VLAN 100 now. And when we examine VLAN 100, you can see this bridge is the root. The priority is 100, and it's based on 0 plus the extended system ID, which is 100. And every single port is a designated port in the forwarding state. So what about using the macro command? Let's go over to DSW2. And on DSW2, instead of manually specifying the priority, let's use the macro root primary. So configure terminal, spanning tree VLANs 20 and 200, 20 and 200, we want to set root, and it's going to be primary. So we want it to be the primary root bridge for VLANs 20 and 200. When we hit enter, here's what happens. DSW2 analyzes the current priority of the root bridge for VLANs 20 and 200. If it's above a certain value, and what is that certain value? Well, if it is above 24,576, then DSW2 will use the priority of 24,576 because that makes it better than the current root bridge. So in this case, it sets itself to 24,576 and everything is perfect. Plus 20 for VLAN 20, and it gets a value of 24,596. Now remember, ASW2 was the root bridge for VLAN 20 using 32,768. That's why 24,576 was chosen, because that's the way it's designed to work. Now, what if the current root bridge had a value of 8,196? Wait a second. Is that a proper value? Let's just double check that. It wouldn't have that. Let's not jump the gun here. Let's just say priority. Oh, we'll say 200. Okay, so there it is, 8,192. So let's say it had 8,192. That would be ASW2. Had 8,192 plus 20. What would that value be then? 8,212. So if that was the current priority, then DSW2 would say, oh, let's lower ourselves to a value that is 4,096 lower than that, which would be 4,096 plus 20. So that's what would happen in those cases. But if it's above that value of 24,576, then based on that macro, that's what DSW2 places itself at. However, let's look at the output of the running config right now. Show run pipe to section spanning tree protocol. And I want you to look at this. You see what it says here? Spanning tree VLAN 2200 has a priority of 24,576. Is that what we typed? No, that is not what we typed. This is what we typed. Root primary. So all it does is run that macro. That's all it does. It runs the macro. And it comes up with a value and creates that priority command all on its own. Which means if another device comes along and says root primary right now, it will find a value that is 4,096 lower than this and become the root bridge. It doesn't guarantee that you are the root bridge. So don't believe it does, because it doesn't. All it does is give your device the ability to search out at that moment in time, root primary is executed, and find the value that will make it the root bridge at that point in time. It doesn't guarantee it will always be the root bridge.